following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to No Credentials Required, where you don't need a press pass to talk sports. We are presented by Belly Up Sports in association with Godzilla Media. Thank you for watching. If you're watching live, thank you for watching. If you're watching on replay, also thank you for watching. And to my right, you're saying to yourself, that's not Dustin.
No, I'm sure not.
No, it is definitely not Dustin. Dustin is off tonight, but I had to call in a pinch hitter. A man who believes that John Wooden stole the pyramid of success from Juan Swanson. We've got Brent from the 1420 podcast. Brent, how are you doing tonight, bud?
I'm doing really good, Ryan. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. I was on Brent's podcast this past weekend. We talked a myriad of topics, including the Arizona Coyotes and the Oakland A's. So after the show, check that podcast out. Brent puts on a great production. He's joining us all the way from Canada, aren't you, Brent?
Beautiful Lethbridge, Alberta, about 2 hours south of Calgary, just north of the Montana border. That's our friends to the south. So that's my close affiliation to the United States right now. So that's where I am, sitting right here, having a good night talking to you.
And above all, he's a Yankees fan, so we know he's good company already.
People just tuned out, seeing they tuned in to not to see all this Yankee stuff behind me, but hopefully they stick around for a good laugh and a chuckle and talk some sports.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have a great discussion tonight. Before we go into the discussion, though, I just want to remind you about our social media channels, which are right down below here on Twitter, Instagram, and the scarcely used TikTok. It's at NoCredsREQ. Facebook.com/NoCredsREQ. On YouTube, it's youtube.com/@NoCredsREQ. And if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, give us a like and smash that like button. Smash responsibly. We're also on, if you're listening on the audio side, we're on a myriad of podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartMedia. Tune in wherever you podcast. Give us a subscription, rate and review. 5 stars is always the appropriate number of stars to rate, and leave a review. We might even read your review on the show. And Brent, we have a special tone for since this is an a listener and watcher engagement show. We want to hear your comments, so we play this beautiful Bean music. I just want to play it for you. It'll set your mind at ease. I promise you.
There we go.
That's right, folks. Get that algorithm up. We want your algorithmic engagement comments. Leave them here, whether you're watching on replay or you're watching live. It's a fun time.
Ryan, that's almost like the more you know sound that's coming across the airwaves there. So it might hopefully the comments are make us a little more smarter, and the more you know might come across not only between our ears but in the comment section as well.
Copyright, Brent. Copyright.
There you go.
You know how it goes.
A little bit.
So on tonight's docket, we're going to talk the New York Yankees. We're going to talk the Stanley Cup Final. We're also going to talk a little Canadian Football League since Brent is from Canada. But first, we want to start off our show with the Yankees. And it wasn't a great weekend for the New York Yankees. They lost. The Yankees lost 2 of 3 against their heated rivals, the Boston Red Sox. Their offense has been kind of missing since Aaron Judge went on the IL with that broken toe he suffered in the Dodgers series, which was, he had a great catch, but unfortunately he broke his toe in the process, and he's been in the IL a couple times this year. So, but if you look into it a lot more, it seems like this offense has no giddy up without Aaron Judge, which brings me to the question to you, Brent. Are the Yankees doomed without Aaron Judge, or is this just an anomaly?
No, I don't think it's an anomaly at all. It actually, kind of, you look back to the that anonymous tweet, or I don't want to, because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but that tweet that came out for Arson Judge going to the San Francisco Giants back in November. This would have been the Yankee team that everybody would have saw this season entirely. This offense is nothing without Aaron Judge. Yeah, you have Anthony Rizzo's a little nicked up right now. He's playing through a little neck injury, but without Judge in that lineup, they seem to be pitching around everybody. And he's had before he went on the IL again with this toe or whatever it might be, because if it was broken, we'd have a bit more of an understanding of what it might be and how long he might be out. But you have a guy that was having numbers just as good or better, and he put it for his MVP season last year, the season that he bet on himself to get that $40 million a year. And now you have a guy doesn't know when he's coming back. And this lineup that's been put together, Sans Judge, you could say it was Arson Judge in the lineup instead. It's not good right now for the Yankees. And I don't want to say doomed, but it ain't good. It ain't good at all. Like it's not good at all. Like
no.
you might be able to get a guy who might be able to run into one here and there. You might see a Gleyber Torres, who I'm extremely frustrated with, might get hot a little bit. You might see DJ LeMahieu get hot, but the chances of all these guys getting hot at once and being able to match the numbers that Judge puts up on a daily basis, and then being able to get Judge on base and being able to pitch around him and everything else, they're in trouble without Aaron Judge. There's no getting around that.
No, absolutely. I'm trying to remember the record without Aaron Judge in the lineup. I believe they're definitely under 500 without Aaron Judge. He is the driver of this Yankee offense. He's the guy who his bat has been the most consistent throughout the year so far. And yeah, Gleyber Torres was a problem, especially last night in that Red Sox game that led the Red Sox to tie the game and then win it in 10. There's got to be a better strategy that Aaron Boone can use when Aaron Judge is not in the lineup. I understand he likes to mash the ball. I understand he likes to use analytics. Dustin and I jokingly call him Boone GPT because we jokingly think he's actually an AI. He's actually an AI program, not a manager. So there's got to be some sort of strategy that he can implement when Judge is not in the lineup. They got to use some. I just think they got to use some small ball. They can't rely on the big home run every single time. Do you agree with that statement?
I 100% agree with you. You look at a team like the Texas Rangers, who has a high batting average right now. They're leading the National League in batting, or the American League in batting average. They're having a heck of a season in the American League West, and they're putting everything together and they're at the right time. Yeah, it's I don't want to say it's not even early anymore. You're over a third of the season done, but the Yankees seem to be sticking with. And I don't put this on Boone so much as I put this on Cashman and his analytics guys. That you have they have a game plan they went into the season with. They said, well, if we get guys on base, get guys on base. Well, that doesn't seem to be working as much as it used to, because now with the rule changes and the shift, how it's been banned, you can kind of hit around things a little bit. You can get guys running a little bit, and like you said, a little bit of small ball. But when you have guys who are getting paid, a la Josh Donaldson, Anthony Rizzo, who doesn't mind hitting it a little bit, but you have Giancarlo Stanton, there's an anomaly how they can pay that guy. I find it astonishing that they haven't been able to switch their thought process a little bit and do something a little bit different, because right now what they're doing isn't working, and it could get to a situation where they're fighting for the third wild card spot because the Baltimore Orioles don't seem to be letting up, and they're a team that's hitting the ball, running a little bit, doing all that 1990s baseball stuff that seems to work now. And I don't understand why the Yankees brass and why Cashman don't bend away from what isn't working. I don't understand.
No. Yeah, I mean, I know that Donaldson's been out of the lineup. He just had a rehab stint with Trenton. I know he just got recalled. Same with Stanton. But there's got to be a different way to jumpstart this offense. I know Anthony Rizzo's been injured. Who is the one guy you see in the Yankee lineup who needs to jumpstart this offense? For me, I think Gleyber Torres is one of those guys who can jumpstart. I know Anthony Volpe has been having growing pains as the new shortstop of the Yankees. But once he gets on base, he steals bases. He's fast, and yes, he does have a little bit of pop to his bat, but that's not showing up right now. But other than Gleyber Torres, Anthony Volpe, which guy in this lineup do you think is the one who needs to step it up in the offensive production?
For me, the guy that's got to do something, maybe he's actually starting to show his age a little bit. And he got a contract that I thought he deserved, and you probably thought he deserved, was DJ LeMahieu, La Machine. He was unbelievable when he first came over, put up some huge numbers from Colorado. And then people were thinking, well, they're inflated numbers because of playing at Coors Field. But now that he's been with the Yankees for a few years now, he's the kind of guy that's got to put the ball in play. He doesn't have big power numbers, but get the ball in play, get on base a lot, and start getting moving guys over. He seems like the kind of guy who doesn't mind hitting the other way a little bit and doing something. I've always liked LeMahieu. I think he's a great player. He keeps his yap shut. He works hard and goes in, night out, and does a lot of good things for that Yankee lineup. He's the kind of guy, but who knows what his health is like, and if he's maybe a little bit injured as well as the rumors. He had the bad toe last year. I don't know why these guys can't get their feet fixed. It's kind of a weird thing with all that money that they're sitting on at Yankee land. It's kind of an odd thing that it's broken toes that keep these guys out and strained hips. It's really odd that the training staff can't figure that out. But to me, it's got to be a guy like DJ LeMahieu who got to step up. He's not the most vocal guy in the locker room. He's like a pretty quiet guy, but he's the kind of guy who's got to just go, you know what, follow my lead, guys, because I'll hit 320. I'll get it on base every twice a game, every game, no matter what. And you guys hop my back because Judge isn't here. He's the kind of guy that I think they got to lean on a little bit.
Yeah, DJ LeMahieu is currently hitting .236 with 6 home runs, and I definitely see that he's got to step things up. The one guy who's really surprised me this year is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, IKF. They put him in the outfield. He plays center field on a semi-regular basis, but his bat has been better. He's got 3 home runs and 15 RBIs, but he's also got 6 stolen bases. So, but his defense has been really, really great. Has been really spectacular out in the outfield. One guy who I'm kind of confused as to why he's still in the lineup every once in a while is Willie Calhoun. I think part of it has to do with the fact that Stanton's been in and out of the lineup with basically made of broken glass. He's made of glass right now
since the day he got there. Yeah.
And then same thing with Harrison Bader. If he's in the lineup, that offense is also popping. But he's also injured a lot too, which is really disappointing.
100%, Ryan. Like when Bader came over for the Montgomery trade last year with the Cardinals, he was injured. Came in the playoffs, hit 3 or 4 home runs in the playoffs last year in their little run that they had, and then this season started off on the IL again. Came up, played a little bit, had some good power numbers, 3 or 4 home runs early, I think it was. Runs a little bit, plays a great defense. Bader's another guy if they can keep him healthy somehow. And he's a guy that's looking for a contract, so it'd be in his best interest to get back in lineup and stay healthy because
stay healthy.
He's every time he gets hurt or goes on the IL, there's another zero off the check when it's all said and done. And I think he's a really good player. And IKF has been surprising everybody, and to play in that environment because everybody was so down on him after that debacle last year, and everybody said and how the Yankees stuck with him and how Steinbrenner as Cashman and Boone just kept sticking with him, saying he's the guy. There's nothing wrong with him. The analytics say this, but the eye test didn't say that. And for me, the eye test has to say it. And he was not good. He hasn't been. He's played shortstop a few times this year. Had 3 errors. The one game I think he had when he was back in shortstop didn't go well. They put him back in the outfield, and he's been serviceable. He has not been the Yankees' problem. It's been guys like Willie Calhoun and the likes, and their catching position has not hit the ball well at all. You look at Higashioka has been non-existent at the plate and everything else. They just haven't got the production from their catcher position at all, and that's where it is. So you look at that lineup. So without Judge, the rest of the guys suffer because they're like, well, we can pitch around this guy, pitch around that guy, and we can the opposing pitching can attack the lesser knowns, right? So it's just one of those things where you take that one big bat out of the lineup and it changes everything. Yeah,
and you talk about the catcher position. Anthony Trevino's been out of the lineup with injuries as well. So when you have him when he's out of the lineup, and you have Higashioka, who I thought last year he had a great spring training last year. Great spring training. I thought he was going to make the jump last year. Unfortunately, he had a very disappointing season, and unfortunately, it's continuing into 2023. He's only hitting .229 right now, but there's someone. Sorry, it's Jose Trevino, not Anthony Trevino.
Jose, yeah.
I apologize. It's Jose Trevino, but he's only. They've got to get some. They got to get some offense at the catcher position. He's only hitting 214, but he's only played 38 games. The only guy who's been in the lineup consistently this year is Gleyber Torres. He's played 66. Looks like he's played all 66 games. Well, almost all 60. He's played almost all 67 games. He played 66 games. Was only out of lineup only once. But yeah, I mean, right now you look at the standings, and you mentioned it earlier, Brent. I don't think anybody's going to catch up to Tampa Bay unless they fall off a little bit. They're playing the red hot Oakland A's tonight. I don't know if you know this. They play
5 in a row. I think they have
five in a
right
row.
now.
They're going for 6 in a row tonight.
Their big protests tomorrow night, I think they got planned out there in Oakland.
Yep,
We talked about it on my show on Saturday there, yeah.
That's tomorrow. That's tomorrow, I believe. It's tomorrow night, I believe. But right behind them is Baltimore, who just you look at Baltimore. That's a team that's been together for between pretty much every single player in that lineup, save for a couple. They've played together in this minor league system for years. And this is a team back in 2016 I thought was going to go to the World Series someday. But right now they're looking like a team that could be a sleeper in the playoffs right now. Between their pitching, their bullpen is outstanding. And I had my guy Eric Arditi from Barstool Sports on a month ago. We talked. He's a big Orioles fan. He covers the Orioles for Barstool Sports. He's a guy who's propped up this team for a long while, and they looked like they were going to make that leap last season. This year, they've made a tremendous leap, and right now they're 5 games in front of the New York Yankees. But then you got Toronto, who's also like the Yankees. They've had some trouble with the injury bug. They're in 4th place in the AL East. And Baltimore sitting in last place at 500. I mean, this division, top to bottom, is the best division in all of Major League Baseball. You have no team with a record under 500 in this division. So, although I think Tampa Bay is going to run away with it, 2 through 4, and 2 through 5, arguably, because they could all 3 out of the 4 of these teams could be in a wild card spot come late September, mid-September, late September. They're going to be jockeying for position to try to get to that wild card.
Yeah, Ryan, like you were saying, we'll get back to that Baltimore comment. I mean, how these guys have been together for a few years. They played in the minor leagues together, and there's something to be said about guys who baseball is an individualistic sport. I get it. And you hit for average, you're up there by yourself, and you pitch for your ERA and strikeouts, and you're up there by yourself. But in general, when you want to win for your teammate and you're out there competing for a team, I think that matters a lot. And I think that gets left behind a lot when these teams that get built through free agency don't really work. You look at the Mets right now, how that's just not working at all. How they're 5 games under 500, that's just not working. And you look at a team like the Houston Astros, who've been able to win a World Series or two. One I don't want to really talk about that. We probably I've forgiven, but I will not forget the 2017 thing.
Where's my trash can?
That's one of those things. But like, that's a team that grew up together through the minor leagues. They added a piece here and there, but I think that matters a lot. And you go back to the '96 Yankees. That was a lot of guys who played together through in the minor leagues, so that helped a lot. Yeah. Like people always talk, like when I get in I don't want to say fights, in disagreements, I guess, with non-Yankee fans about the Yankees winning World Series and buying World Series back in the mid 90s there. And I say, whoa. When they were winning World Series, there was a lot of guys on those teams that played together in minor leagues who weren't making a bunch of money. And then when George decided to start spending a lot of money, that's when they weren't winning a lot of World Series. And that's actually fact. Yes, 2009, they spent a ton of money going out and getting CC and AJ Burnett and Mark Teixeira and the like. But in general, when George was spending a ton of money in the 2000s, they weren't winning.
No,
they won a lot of World Series by having a team that came out of the minors, and like you just said with the Baltimore Orioles, that's something that you can build on. And like the Jays, they've had some pitching problems. You thought that they'd have been a lot better with their core guys, with Vladdy Guerrero Jr., Kevin Biggio, and what's the guy with the hairdo? I can't stand him, but
not Vlad Guerrero. You mentioned
Bichette, Bichette.
Oh, Bo Bichette, yeah.
So those 3 guys, and they were supposed to build this team, and it just hasn't materialized because Vladdy has not been hitting the ball that well this year, so that's why they've taken a little step back.
Not only that, but I'm sorry to interrupt you, but not only that, but their pitching hasn't been there. They just designated Alek Manoah for assignment.
Yeah, they sent him down to the Florida State League, basically the Florida
Ooh,
Penn League or the State Penal League. And you think if they would have got like he had 12 starts, he's got a 6+ ERA, and the stats weren't good. So you think if they would have got 6 decent starts out of Manoah, then the Jays are right there. So like they could
yep,
pretty much pin their season on that one guy. And it's horrible to pin a season on one player, but when it's your pitcher who was an all-star pitcher last year for the Toronto Blue Jays and Alek Manoah, how the pitch clockitis might have got a hold of him. It's crazy to think that one person could have actually, for lack of a better term, ruined their season.
yeah.
Really.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at the national. We're going to switch over to the National League in just a second here, and right now, the East, Atlanta's. I want to say Atlanta's running away with the East. The Miami Marlins are only 3.5 games behind them, and it's all because of the strength of their pitching. Their pitching is outstanding, and they have they're they're -20 in the run differential, which is very odd. But this is a team to watch. Same thing with the Central. Pittsburgh's in first place. That is again a similar situation to the Baltimore Orioles, where these guys have played in the minor leagues together. They've played with these rules with the pitch clock and with the pitch clock, which was in AAA last year. So they played together. Milwaukee's only game behind. Cincinnati's a sneaky team to watch, as are the Arizona Diamondbacks. And we're going to take a quick visit to the comment section in just a moment. But is it anyone's game in the National League right now? Could any of these teams?
I actually think that it is. I think
Braves.
it's great for baseball, and I think it's fantastic that there's these teams that aren't spending a bunch of money or are telling Mr. Cohen out there in Flushing, Queens, to take his $350 million payroll and shove it up his where. I think it's great for the game of baseball, and it's keeping people interested when you get into the first months of summer here, where a lot of people are already thinking about their fantasy football drafts, and now people are thinking about baseball a little bit in centers that probably wouldn't be, like you said, in Pittsburgh, in Miami, and in Arizona, Milwaukee, and everything else. I think it's great for the game of baseball. These teams are staying in it, and will they be able to outlast it? Who knows? But you can only beat who you play, and that's what the records that they have right now are right there for a reason, because and they're sticking around. I think it's great for the game of baseball, personally.
Yeah, this has been a fun season, and we're going to actually take a quick trip to the comments section before we go to our first commercial break. We got our old buddy Wonko the saying, is the new Reds kid Ellie De La Cruz making any news outside of Cincinnati? Granted, tiny sample size. Yes. I'm a De La Cruz believer. That guy is going to be, if he gets going, if his bat gets going, like I said, Cincinnati's going to be that sneaky team to watch, especially in that race in the Central Division, where right now it's a tight race between Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, and Cincinnati. And Cincinnati's kind of come out of nowhere this year, especially if Ellie De La Cruz gets his bat going. Ever since he got called up, had that one home run against Syndergaard, and who's not the same as he used to be. But that's another topic for another day. Our old buddy Jared from Corner Booth Podcast look at this team up. I believe he's referring to his beloved Arizona Diamondbacks. We all know the best rookie is my boy Corbin Carroll. Go Snakes. Also says baseball has been amazing this year, super entertaining no matter who's playing. I feel like a kid again watching all this. And our old buddy Sam Shady from the Shady Sports Network says, what's up, guys? So thanks for joining. Thanks for jumping on there, Sam Shady. So we're going to take a quick commercial break from our friends from Invader Coffee. We'll come back, talk about the Stanley Cup Final. So stay tuned for No Credentials Required. This episode of No Credentials Required is brought to you by Invader Coffee. For the coffee lover who wants good, quality coffee with no bullshit and no filler, Invader Coffee is an ultra-premium, veteran-owned coffee company proudly delivering only the best coffee your hard-earned money can buy. They aim to only serve the highest quality, organic, air-roasted coffee beans sourced from free trade farms all over the world. They keep things simple. The best coffee at an affordable price in order to provide you with the value you deserve for your morning boost. 100% fair trade, 100% organic coffee beans, 100% air-roasted, 100% money-back guarantee. Visit invadercoffee.com, enter promo code BELLYUP at checkout, and receive 15% off your order. That's right, folks. You better believe it. The best veteran-owned coffee company in America is Invader Coffee. my friends at Invader Coffee can help support the show at the link down below in the description, both on the podcast side and on YouTube and Facebook. I've been ordering from Invader Coffee the last couple of years now. High quality, great air roasted beans. I make mine fresh every single day. My French press, get it fresh roasted beans. Get the whole bean. Don't get the ground, but I get the whole bean, and it's a great coffee for your. It's great coffee for the value of your dollar, guys. So they're also having a contest right now. If you order their Outsider blend, which is a dark blend, it's really great. You're automatically entered to win a Chevrolet Chevette SS, so a muscle car. You can win a muscle car, Brent. I mean, come on.
A Chevy Chevette. I remember those. I'm old enough to remember the original Chevettes, but that's a different story for another day.
So get your Invader Coffee, get 15% off your order with promo code BELLYUP, but also use the link in the description, which is our affiliate link. You'll help the show. You also get some great coffee. So invadercoffee.com. Again, use the link in the description. Use promo code BELLYUP for 15% off your order. And just a clarification, look at this. Let's look at this team up. He was referring to our solid collaboration. He's going to roll. Have a great show. Thanks, Jared, for stopping by. Jared's our director of podcast development at Belly Up Sports. He's also the host of the Corner Booth podcast. I've been on his show. I've been on his pregame show on Thursdays. Occasionally, I'm one of the more frequent guests on the show. Brent, it's a great show. The great show. You should check it out.
I check his show out because we record Thursday nights and he's usually on right before we get going. So we've kind of we've crossed paths and I've tried. It just hasn't worked out. But I've promised I'll get on their show, and he calls me his favorite Canadian. So that's good enough for me. I don't know how many other Canadians he knows, so maybe I'm the only one. But whatever, it don't much matter. But buttering up a guy never hurts.
There you go. It can never. It never hurts. You're right. So the Stanley Cup Finals tomorrow night is Game 5. The Vegas Golden Knights lead this series 3-1 after Saturday night's win in Florida. Brent, I know you're a hockey guy as well as I am. This is we had our mid-season special with Belly Up Sports back in February with our friends Jesse Pierce. And Jenner and oh gosh, I can't remember who else. Josh from the Rising 2 podcast. Are we going to see a Stanley Cup being raced tomorrow night, or is there some fight still left in the Florida Panthers? You know,
you mentioned back to that our mid-season hockey show there that we talked about, and my big thing was I was laughing about how bad the Florida Panthers were, and so I got to go back and kind of eat my words a little bit because they were in a slump there, and I said it was no surprise how bad they were because Paul Maurice went there and he's kind of never really done anything, and all of a sudden, and then Matthew Tkachuk went there and he's kind of a cancer. So I got to go look back and eat my words a little bit. And that's the bad thing about being on podcasts and being on the air is that, you know, you can say 1,000 things about 10 years ago. No one will remember what you said because you just keep your yap going. But then there's these ones that people go, hey, remember saying this? Yeah, I said that. I apologize, but whatever. But I hope that the Vegas Golden Knights don't win the Stanley Cup tomorrow night, although I'd rather see the season be done because I think it drags on a little bit. I think it's getting it gets warmer outside, and I don't want to be stuck in front of a TV if it's not baseball. It's hockey season to me should end at the end of May, and that's it, not getting into the middle of June like we are. But not only that reason, Ryan, but I think the thing I enjoyed that game on Saturday night. The last 10 minutes were unbelievable action. It was great drama. The Florida Panthers almost tied it up 2 or 3 times, and then that last 2 minutes where they were all around the net, and then the end when Tkachuk was beaten up. He was just getting in arguments here and there and fighting and squirming and getting cross-checked in the back, and it was great it was great hockey to see. And it was kind of the way the game's got to be played, and the intensity level was really high, and the last 2 games in that series have been high intensity for sure. So I wouldn't mind seeing 1 or 2 more games. I don't want to see it go another week, but maybe get into Thursday night and we'll call her good. That's my idea. I don't want to see Vegas win at home because I don't think they've earned that right per se.
Do you think the Vegas Golden Knights are the most hated franchise in all of hockey right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. because as a Leafs fan, as a Leafs lover, it's been since not before I was born since it's happened, right? Since they won a cup, and then you go back to before the Vegas Golden Knights even were named the Golden Knights. Their owner Bill Foley, he said, we're going to win the Stanley Cup in 6 years, and this is year 6 of the plan. They almost won in their first year of existence, and now they got a shot to do it tomorrow night and probably on Thursday. And I think they're the most hated franchise in hockey, just for the way they manipulated the salary cap a little bit. They didn't play their captain most of the year in Mark Stone. They could find a way to twist the rules a little bit, not break, because then otherwise that would be against the law. But they find a way to get players. They found a way to manipulate the expansion draft and get this guy and get that guy. And they've gotten good players throughout, and they haven't cared who they've stepped on their way to getting to the Stanley Cup Finals. Once again this year, they had a couple of great coaches in their existence so far. They're on their third coach in 6 years, so that's something to say. And then when they had their franchise guy, who you would have thought, with Marc-Andre Fleury, they said, yeah, thanks, bye, see you to him. And then they let him go too. So there's zero loyalty with that franchise. That owner's out to win. And you can't blame GM Kelly McCrimmon for saying, well, this guy,
Brad McCrimmon. Yeah.
This guy's paying me. And so I'm going to do what I can do to make this thing happen. I have my marching orders. So it's not McCrimmon's fault and the like, but they're doing it, and 6 years in, I think they're hated, and I also think there's a lot of jealousy involved in the Vegas Golden Knights going to a Stanley Cup Final for their second time in 6 years with and being one win away right now.
So I wrote an article on bellyupsports.com a couple of months back about I called it the Haters Guide to the Stanley Cup, and what I did was I ranked every single team according to hateability. So the Boston Bruins, it was for me, it was 8.5 out of 10 because they're Boston. Yeah. Colorado was 9 out of 10. I scored Vegas as a 9 out of 10, and I'm going to read the paragraph that I wrote. Up next in the Haters Guide to the Stanley Cup playoffs are the Vegas Golden Knights. Fans have been hating on the Golden Knights since their inaugural season when they went to the Stanley Cup Final. Hey, is it my fault that Brad McCrimmon took advantage of your incompetent GM? No, it isn't. But the success of the Golden Knights has always been a divisive topic. After 1 year absence from the playoffs, the Golden Knights are back in the playoffs. Do the Golden Knights have anyone who is pest-worthy? Not really. But again, haters hate success, and the Vegas Golden Knights are a success story. High score on the hateability scale. That might change to 10 or maybe 20 out of 10 after the Stanley Cup Final is over and they win the Stanley Cup, provided that the Florida Panthers don't come back from a 3-1 deficit, which I can't remember. If I remember correctly, the last time a 3-1 deficit was maybe your Toronto Maple Leafs had done it.
There was a 3-1 situation the wrong way, but that was in the first round with the Boston Bruins back in 2013. But a 3-1 deficit in the finals, I can't remember if anybody's come back from that. And I go back a long ways watching Stanley Cup playoffs. It's tough because the Stanley Cup playoffs are such a grind, and you play like it used to be you play every night and then you get a night off. You play both 2 nights and you get a night off, and now it's every other night. Now it's every third night for TV reasons and building availability because the Miami Heat are in there right now. But it's going to be a tough road for the Florida Panthers to jump back in this. That Vegas team is big. That Peter Angelo, who they got from a Stanley Cup champion team with the St. Louis Blues, he's a hell of a player, and he's the guy that they kind of got that solidified and made that defensive core really, really notable. And he's got a little bit of a mean streak in him, just enough. And that Vegas team plays hard. They play big. They've kind of changed the way hockey was leaning for a little bit there with some smaller forwards and smaller D-man puck moving guys. And now Vegas has guys that don't mind punching the face, like the 1989 Calgary Flames or whoever, right? Who a little bit rough, a little bit tumble. It's a different kind of hockey. Or like those New Jersey teams that you follow back in the 90s that weren't the most skilled teams, but you had Ken Danico and Scott Stevens back on defense causing a ruckus.
And Scott Niedermayer
did. And Scott Niedermayer, who could skate like the wind, but he was also a big guy. Niedermayer wasn't a small character at all. Like he was a big dude, and so it's kind of reminiscent of that. Like they don't play the left wing lock or the defensive trap like those Devils teams did, but that defensive structure that they have in Vegas, it's something to behold because they're playing with a goaltender. I didn't know the guy's name until 2 weeks ago. in Aiden Hill.
Aiden
And,
Hill.
and he might win himself a Conn Smythe trophy in a couple
Yeah.
nights. Right. And I didn't know who the guy was. So they're getting the odd save here and there. And that's all Brodeur had to do back then. Get the odd save now and then. We'll score enough goals. We're going to do this on this side. And that Vegas team, it's like the one thing that I would like to see, and they might get a less punchability out of me if somehow, some way they would get Phil the Thrill Kessel on the ice for a shift or two in these playoffs, because people forget he's even on that team. He's been a healthy scratch, and I've always had a soft spot for Kessel, because he's been kind of the such an aloof hockey player. I don't care. I'll get my 80 points, play every game here and there. So it's if they get Kessel in the lineup somehow, I wouldn't mind that them winning the cup.
So I was right about the only team to come back from a 3-1 deficit in the Stanley Cup Final. It was the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1942. The one and only time.
I know we're getting old, Ryan. It's between before our time a little bit. I know we're getting a little long in the tooth, but I wasn't there for that one. You couldn't even PVR those ones. That's or VHS or whatever.
No, you couldn't. No,
right?
You couldn't.
Yeah.
But there's two guys I other than Aiden Hill, there's two guys on this Vegas squad who I think could win the Conn Smythe Trophy. Jack Eichel, who this is his first, and hard to believe, this is his first playoffs.
Yeah.
And he's playing like he's been there forever, because of all those years in Buffalo, unfortunately, the Sabres wasted, not building a team around him where they got decent defense and decent goaltending. They couldn't provide that for him, but gets traded to Vegas. And to arguably, Buffalo got a pretty good return with Alex Tuck and a couple of first-round picks. But another guy who could argue might win the Conn Smythe Trophy is Chandler Stevenson. Scored 2 goals in game 4, and he scored a game-winning goal in I think it was game 2 of the Western Conference Final, if I'm not mistaken. He's played a pretty big part in this Vegas Golden Knights run. So I wouldn't be surprised if they gave it to Aiden Hill. Wouldn't be surprised if they gave it to Jack Eichel. And that, Chandler Stevenson I think he's the dark horse candidate for Conn Smythe Trophy. So
another guy that might throw into that loop is Marchessault too, as well. He's
Jonathan
really
Marchessault.
He's got a lot of points, but that Stevenson's a good hockey player, big body, plays hard. Eichel, you wonder, you just wonder if a guy like Connor McDavid sitting at home in his palatial estate in Edmonton, just biting his face off, because I'm better than him. I went higher in the draft than him, and it was for a while. If you remember that draft year, there was a bit of talk who's going to go first overall, and it really wasn't and I'm not saying by any means that Eichel is on the same level as a Connor McDavid, because he's not. But you got to think that there's got to be some pangs of jealousy running through McDavid's veins right now, thinking that son of a gun is one game away, and I'm twice the player, not twice, but 1.5 times the player that he is, and we can't get out of our own way. And man, that's got to be a tough pill to swallow for Connor McDavid. But Eichel, he survived his wounds, played it out there in Buffalo. It just didn't work. And you gotta like his, and he's been really good. Like, he's been a good player throughout. He kind of left on a bad note and said some things maybe he shouldn't have said here and there in Buffalo. But they're kids. Like, I think that's one thing, Ryan, that we forget about, is that most of these guys, when they're in their first contracts, they're kids, and they're going to say dumb things. We kind of forget that. We always hold these athletes to such a high level, but they're pampered so much when they're young, and they don't get to make the mistakes that you or I got to make away from the microphone, right? And I think that's one thing that we forget about with all these athletes, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, or hockey, that we forget that we should probably turn our ears off a little bit when these guys speak, because they're just kids, and when they get a chance to do something, and when they do age a little bit, they're usually a lot better off. But no, it's good to see Eichel getting that chance, because he wrote out those years in Buffalo as long as he could. Yeah.
And speaking of McDavid, and I know I hate to bring up a player who's sitting at home right now, but I gotta ask you, Brent, and my co-host Dustin, he's a big Oilers fan. He loves the fact that Connor McDavid is bringing back the oil, but I gotta ask you, and I've had this kind of thought in my back of my head, wrestling with this question for the past year or so. If the Edmonton Oilers don't go to a Stanley Cup in the next 2 seasons, is McDavid gone from Edmonton?
100%. 100%.
Sorry, Dustin.
and, and I'll tell you why, because right now they got him at 12.5 or 12.6. And I like on our podcast, we don't like talking money because these guys are all, in my opinion, they're all underpaid when it comes down, because you think what the owners are making, but we've talked about that before. But I think that if they don't get to a cup final and win a couple of games in the cup final, like don't get swept, that to McDavid's going to go, what am I doing here? I could probably play somebody else. I'm already rich beyond belief. And if I made 10 million, which the PA wouldn't allow him to do, but I can make 10 million a year on my contract and make, because he's on a lot of MGM bet and this bet, that bet, and he's got BioSteel. He's got a lot of contracts everywhere. He doesn't need that contract to make himself richer, right? So he might want to go, you know what? There's a place in Colorado that they got a younger team. They go out and get a goaltender or make a super team. Could this be an NBA situation where these guys go, yeah, this guy? It could happen. Like it easily could happen, because these guys are rich beyond belief. You know, we talked about the other day, Austin Matthews. He's up for a new contract in a year, and these guys could say, you know what? Let's just all go to Arizona and golf all year. Who knows?
Yeah,
like they got cap room beyond belief. I think that, but I do think that McDavid will say, you know what, this isn't working, because Leon Draisaitl is going to get paid, because he played his first 4 or 5 years on a low contract at $8.5 million, which is the biggest bargain in hockey history, and and he'll be gone. Right. So, I can't see McDavid not being gone. I if they don't win something, I can't see him saying, you know what? Yeah, I built this great big house, but you know what? I was going to sell it anyway. So I wasn't going to live in Edmonton in my retirement years anyways.
Yeah.
Nobody retires in Edmonton.
Isn't that why Chris Pronger was traded out of Edmonton in 2007, because his wife hated the winters?
There was a little situation that there were some rumors that
allegedly. I'm sorry, I'm going to say allegedly, because I don't want.
There was alleged rumors, but that was one of the things. And then his wife is part somehow of the Walmart family, because they're from St. Louis, and on and on and on. So she actually has just as much or more dough than he does. So she was calling the shots. Like, it's time to go.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about mentioning a super team there, Brent, and the only time, unlike the NBA, which has the Larry Bird rule, where you could have a supermax, what's called a supermax contract, where you can pay the player as much money as you want, and it won't count against your salary cap. The only way I can see a super team in the NBA, or the NHL, excuse me, is if the CBA gets renegotiated again, which, by the way, Gary Bettman was super smart to do this during the COVID break.
Yeah.
By the way, that was probably the smartest thing that Gary Bettman's ever done.
We have this much money. No, we don't. Actually, we didn't make any money this year.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. But the only way I can see a super team in the NHL is if they do the same thing in the NBA with the Larry Bird supermax contract, the Larry Bird rule. It's the only time you'll see a super team of, Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and possibly a defenseman other than Chris Letang. But one day it could happen. Well,
maybe the Crosby Letang Malkin trio gets a guy by the name of Connor McDavid somehow in Pittsburgh this year. I don't know. I just like you said, I can't see McDavid, especially if he sees Jack Eichel winning a Stanley Cup in a day or two. I can't see Connor McDavid being too happy about it. I just can't, because you can win Hart trophies, and you can win scoring titles and Art Ross and Maurice Richard trophies, and those don't go on your mantle. Stanley Cups do, and rings go on your fingers, right? Yeah, and the rest of it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you don't want to be the guy. You don't want to be the guy who's considered one of the top scorers of a generation and not win a Stanley Cup. You don't. You don't.
Well, the worst thing, the best that never won, won, like that conversation, Dan Marino, right? Like, or Jim Kelly or whoever. Like, you never want to be part of that conversation, because that means you never won, and the entire point of playing is to win. So yeah,
exactly. As a certain former New York Jets coach said back in 2002, you play to win the game.
100%.
You play to win the game.
It's the only reason. And until you win that last game of the season, you've been I don't want to say failure, because these guys are rich beyond belief, but you haven't. I don't think you've achieved your goal as an athlete. win that very last game that you play, right? So it's one of those
Yeah,
things.
I actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I've been watching the Bill Walton 30 for 30, the luckiest man alive, I'm the luckiest man in the world. And he mentions that he says, I don't have many regrets in life, but if there's one thing I could go back and do is play in the 1974 national championship, the national semifinal of the 1974 Final Four, because we should have beat the brakes off of the of North Carolina State, and we didn't, because we were just discombobulated. We were a discombobulated team that year. So yeah, you want to be that. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that guy who
winning matters so much. I think people underestimate how much winning actually matters to these athletes. Like there are some that it looks like that they don't care, but I think 85% of them, they really want it. It's that 15% that you see, like that guy has got no drive. Like he gets his paycheck, he turns it off, and that's it. You see it a lot in some sports, but I think a large percentage of these guys want to win and have that championship ring, and it's a story that they can tell forever.
Yeah, and speaking of people who are going out on top, congratulations to Amanda Nunez from the UFC. She retires as a champion.
That's the best way to go out.
I don't know if I want
to go getting punched
Absolutely.
in the face, but that's the best way to go out.
I've been punched in the face. It's not that bad. Well,
yeah.
For a while, it stings for a minute. But all right, we're gonna go to one more segment. But before we do that, we just want to mention our friends here at Caldera Lab. Time to give a shout out to our favorites in skincare. It's Caldera Lab, backed by a leading clinical trial where 9 out of 10 men, that's 90% of men, experienced healthier and visibly improved skin. Caldera Lab has the tools to unlock your best first impression and confidence. Let's face it, guys, we're not getting any younger. I'm not getting any younger. Brent, I'm sure you're not getting any younger.
No, it hasn't worked that way yet.
No, not yet. But as we age, gentlemen, your health becomes important. That includes your physical health, and that includes your face. You might notice more fine lines, wrinkles, and signs of aging. It's time to take control of your skin with Caldera Lab. And today we have an exclusive offer for our audience, so you can try for yourself why so many men trust Caldera Lab for their skin needs. I mean, besides having the best looking beard at Belly Up Sports, I also got the best looking skin at Belly Up Sports. Come on. So try it out. It's calderalab.com. Enter promo code NOCREDS at checkout. You get 20% off their best product. So calderalab.com. You also use the website calderalab.com/NoCreds, and you get 20% off their best products, including you get to try a bunch of stuff, and it's good stuff, and it's clinically proven. 9 out of 10 men, they recommend it. And plus, if you're not satisfied, you get your money back. What's to lose? Go calderalab.com/NoCreds. You get 20% off your order. The last thing we're going to talk about tonight, Brent, is the Canadian Football League. Again, you're Canadian. You're born and raised Canadian boy. I'm sure you pay attention a little bit to the Canadian Football League. Doesn't get as much shine as it should in your country. I happen to be a big CFL fan. Doug Flutie was my gateway drug to the CFL. But week one started this week. We had a few surprises. We had a few expectations. We had a great game in Winnipeg between Hamilton and the Blue Bombers, two teams that may be seeing each other in Hamilton in November. But we also had BC taking on the Calgary Stampeders, Montreal and Ottawa, and Saskatchewan and Edmonton. Brent, if you happen to notice some of the games, what's games stuck out in your mind, and just what game stuck out in your mind? And so we conclude week one.
The two things that I notice a lot, and the games it's early. It's the CFL. It's a long grind. It starts now. It's June the 11th when the games start. Probably got going on the 9th on Friday. But the Grey Cup doesn't end until I think it's the end of November now.
Mid-November, right before American Thanksgiving. They
drag that out, so it's really tough to see who's going to play. You get a read, but the biggest thing that for the CFL fans and for me personally was the emergence of some fans coming back to Edmonton this weekend. They finally got crowds back. They had the COVID years, everything else. We don't try to talk about that because it brings up a lot of craziness and everything else, their beliefs and unbeliefs, but whatever. But the Edmonton Elks, as they're called now, for those who don't know, that when they changed the name of their franchise, that brought up a big stink. There was a lot of pushback from that Edmonton Elks name change from the Eskimos, that they've been around forever. My mother, being one of them, said she never watched, but I watched her catching a peek this week and watching what the score was in the football game. And then, but the crowds were really good in the CFL this weekend. People in the cities in general, they like their CFL, and that's the biggest thing, is that they go out and they support their teams. The people who are going to watch this show or listen to the show are going to say, well, in Calgary there wasn't a big crowd, there only 17,000, but that's because there was smoky conditions, so the air conditions were quite bad on Saturday night. But in general, the CFL, I love it. It's entertaining football. I find it a lot more action-packed, and I'm probably going to get persecuted for this and slaughtered for this. I enjoy it a lot more than the NFL, because in the NFL, if you have a 13-point lead with 10 minutes left or 12 minutes left or in the fourth quarter, that game is over. The CFL is a lot different in comparison, where there's 3 downs, you got to move the ball, first downs, and it goes quick, and the way it all works out. I think it's an entertaining brand of football that people should really check out.
Absolutely. And I know this year the U.S. games are played both on CBS Sports Network, and the CFL is also offering free streaming with CFL Plus. So I got a chance to watch the Hamilton Winnipeg game on Friday night. I was entertained. I was highly entertained. Winnipeg went up big in the first half. I believe it was a 20-point lead going to the locker room, and then Hamilton came back. Bo Levi Mitchell had a slow start, overcame that slow start, almost brought him back to tie the game. Well, unfortunately, time kind of ran out. So that was a very entertaining game. Edmonton still winless since 2019. The last time, Brent, that the Edmonton Elks won at home was October 21st, 2019, when they were still the Eskimos.
You know, you think
that's how long they've been without a home win.
You think about how long ago that was, right? You think 2019 was 4 years ago, but everything that's gone on in the world since 2019, I know you're not a political show, and I'm not. Ours isn't a political show, but all the stuff that's going on, 2019 doesn't seem like a number in the vernacular of numbers anymore, with everything that's gone on since 2020. So that's a long time. And you mentioned Bo Levi Mitchell, how he bounced over from Calgary after they said, thanks, bye, see, it's time to move on. He's still a good quarterback in this league. And that's the thing about CFL quarterbacks. They can stick around for a long time. Yeah, they're not getting rich beyond belief in the Canadian Football League, but they can play something they like or love and make a couple of bucks and set up a broadcasting career after the fact. And that's one thing that I like about the CFL, is you get to know these guys a little bit, and they're very modest athletes. You see them on the street, and they're like, the average salary, I think, like they can make like as little as $71,000, and they're a little more down to earth. It's a professional league, but it's in a semi-professional environment. The stadiums are smaller, they're more intimate, and you get to know these guys a little bit more. And there's only the 8 games a week, or 10. Oh, lost you.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I gotta run real quick. Hold on. Go ahead.
Or 10 games a week. So you watch this. The only problem that we have here in Canada with the Canadian Football League is that you don't really know when the games are on, and they don't advertise it as much as they should. They've lost an entire generation of football fans, because we're not me, but the younger generation, Ryan, is that the streaming and everything else that happens, and people don't really tune into the Canadian Football League, because it happens in the summertime, whereas the National Football League, they have the market cornered in the late fall and during the winter, whereas people want to watch football, whereas in Canada in the summer, as you know, we only get X amount, where you are in New York, you only get X amount of summer days, so you got to take advantage of them and not be cooped up inside.
All right, we're back. Sorry about that. Had to run real quick.
Yep.
So it's I mean, I'm entertained by the CFL. I've been a big CFL fan for a number of years, probably since the mid '90s, when Doug Flutie went up there and won a couple of Grey Cup titles. And I was looking forward to this season, so I'm like, it's a fun.
Well,
It's
the thing
just
is
so
about the
much fun to
CFL
watch.
is there are guys who've gone down there. Like this goes even before Doug Flutie. You look at Warren Moon back in the day, how he ended up playing. He played with the Edmonton Eskimos back then and won, I think,
Yep,
four or five
he went.
championships
Yep, he
with the
won
Eskimos,
four
and
straight.
then
Yeah,
and then he ended up playing in the National Football League and having a very good career there. You remember Jeff Garcia ended up going down
yep,
after he played with the Calgary Stampeders. He ended up going down with the San Francisco 49ers because I think he's from Santa Clara or somewhere
yeah,
around that
yeah.
area, right?
Yep.
And then the Dave or Dickinson, he went down there and he tried to do the same thing. He didn't have as much success in the NFL, but there is some guys who have come out of the CFL, and it's an entertaining game. It really is. They don't get enough credit, and like I said, they just don't know. You don't know when the games are on. It doesn't get enough push around here, which is odd
No,
because. It's really strange because like the NFL gets a huge push no matter what time of year it is, and to me, like obviously the CFL is not as good as the NFL, but just the time of the season, I think you look at the XFL and the United Football League, whatever else they got going on,
USFL. Yeah.
they're having a tough time doing it because people just get so much football with the NFL. The CFL just doesn't really get a chance, and at the time of year, I don't think is the right time. But I don't think you can go head to head with the NFL. I think it'd be a bad decision.
No, and here in the States, there's definitely an oversaturation of football, especially with the XFL and the USFL. I think they're competing basically right now for attention. I know the XFL recently announced they lost $60 million this year, but with any business venture, you're gonna lose money in your first year, and they expect to make 120 million next year. But I think there's just an oversaturation of football. I had a private group chat with a couple friends of mine, and we discussed it over the weekend. I personally think if you're the XFL and you're you're starting your league 6 days after the
Ridiculous.
Super Bowl, that's overkill of football. I mean, I love football. I'm a big football fan. I've played it. I've watched it since I was a little kid. But there's a certain point where you just gotta be like, okay, well, this is just enough. And I love the like I said, I love the CFL. XFL was kind of into USFL when I was a little kid. When I was a little tyke. We had the New Jersey Generals. That
Yeah,
was our team. And I grew up and I was born in New Jersey.
he was
That
owned by
was
a certain
our
somebody,
team.
wasn't he?
Yeah, it
What
was
were
owned
they?
by a certain former president. I
Yeah,
can't remember whom, but we're not gonna go there. But yeah, but yeah, that's at a certain point you just gotta stop. You just gotta I wouldn't say stop, but it's just you gotta have a proper break from football for a little while.
I don't think that, and Ryan, I'm glad you brought that up because I brought it up with my co-host Dave on the 1420 podcast. Is that I don't think that these guys really have a plan. They have an end goal, but they don't know how they're getting there.
Right.
Because to start a football season, to say that people want to watch football after the NFL season done, I think they're wrong. I think they're 100% wrong because even if you watch championship games when a lot of teams when their team is out, they'll watch the Super Bowl, they'll watch the event and they'll take part of the event, but they aren't really watching the games. So to say that they'll watch it because it's football, well, that's not true. I mean, that's just not a thing because
No.
people don't watch the Aloha Bowl or whatever is going on just because it's on TV, right?
Right.
So you can't just say and yeah, you might get the odd person who watches their alma mater kid play or whatever it is here and there, but to say you're going to ride the wave and continue watching it, I think you're mistaken. The CFL, like if one of these teams wanted to become have a feeder league per se, that might be something for someone to look into where you do have a bit of a lull. We'll go, okay, let's ease into football season. There's games in August, training camps happening, and build on that momentum. That might be a better idea to have a farm team. You can't play the Canadian rules because it wouldn't work that well. It's a lot different. Not just a 3-down situation, but it's a lot different game. But it's something that maybe both these sides should look at a little bit, saying how can we grow our game as well and not try to beat the US or the NFL, but try to merge with the NFL a little bit.
Yeah, I know that the
Maybe not merge,
XFL.
but you know what? Yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about.
I don't know. I get what you mean, because NFL Europe for a very long time, and the World League of American Football for in the 90s and the early 2000s was that feeder league. And I know that XFL has sort of a loose partnership with the NFL, but I think what you're going to see, and this is a reoccurring thing on No Credentials Required, where Rice Stradamus comes out and makes a prediction. Somehow it comes true.
That you throwing up crap on the wall, something's bound to stick, Ryan.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that thunder. Here comes the prediction. So I think the XFL and the USFL eventually merge, and we get as you mentioned, Brent, a National Football League feeder system, but they play in smaller cities. Like you see, Birmingham, Alabama absolutely loves spring football between
they had the
WFL,
Birmingham Barracudas with Matt Dunnigan back in the day. I don't know if you remember that one back in 1994. I think it was.
Yes,
Matt Dunnigan. He's still on TSN. He had a barbecue show a few years ago. Matt Dunnigan did crazy stuff. But yeah.
But you had the Birmingham Americans / Vulcans of the World Football League, had the Birmingham Stallions of the USFL, got big crowds. The Birmingham Iron of the AAF, Alliance of American Football, and now you get the Stallions coming back, and they draw huge crowds of the USFL. So you have a feeder system that plays in smaller cities that deserves to have football, like a Birmingham, a San Diego, a St. Louis, let's say Salt Lake City, Orlando, Florida, New Jersey. I would love to go see a New Jersey General team in New Jersey.
Go where there's not teams. Go where a team can call it their own. Go where people can call that team their own. Don't go into Chicago. Nobody cares. No one, and nobody is going to care. And don't pretend to sell something to advertisers to say they're going to care, because they're not going to care. They're not.
Right. No, you have to have, like I said, you got to have it in cities that don't have a market for at least the NFL, but they can at least see players who could go to the NFL. The CFL for a long time was that kind of system. Yes. Nathan Rourke, BC Lions, had a great season last year. Now he's with Jacksonville. Yeah. Now he's with the Jacksonville Jaguar. He's probably going to be the third quarterback on that roster for the Jaguars this year. And he's playing under Doug Peterson. Who better to learn than Doug Peterson if you're a quarterback? Former quarterback himself.
Now that you mentioned it, Ryan, I'm quite surprised that more Americans, because Americans are much more football crazy nation than Canada is. I'm quite actually surprised that there aren't more people tuning in on a Friday night or a Saturday night or a Sunday afternoon to watch a CFL game, because you guys really like your football, and the further south down you go, people really enjoy their football. Whereas right now, like I was saying, we only get X amount of more months a year. So on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, we're out playing golf and having a good time out in the lake. And we're not watching football as much as we are, because we're not a football crazy nation. So it's quite surprising that the ratings, and they very well might be, but it's quite surprising there aren't more people tuning into the CFL. Or maybe it's just one of these things. It's not marketed enough either. I don't know.
I would say save Regina, Saskatchewan, Hamilton. Those are the cities that really do care about Canadian football. Because Regina, that's the only thing they really have professionally. They don't have an NHL team. They don't have an NBA team.
Well, the thing you got with the Toronto Argonauts, they're in a major market. Like, Toronto is a major market, not just in Canada, in North America. And so the people of Toronto think, well, we're bigger than the CFL, so they don't go to games, and they play at the BMO Field, which is a soccer field, which is small. It's not built for football. And then you have the BC Lions, who play in Vancouver, who downgraded. They still play in BC Place, but they've downgraded that stadium to make it look smaller, so it looks fuller or more full. I can't remember how you're exactly supposed to say that, but and so Vancouver people think that they're a major market, and they are in North America. But so you have those two cities who think that they're bigger than the CFL, and when your two major markets in the country don't go, it kind of brings the game down a little bit. And they should move to a place. They should move a team maybe out to the East Coast, out to New Brunswick or Newfoundland somewhere, to St. John's, and maybe push the game a little bit more, because you don't need a huge stadium. Like if you had 25,000 people, that's a viable game in a viable place. And I think that's something the CFL should really look at.
I know that they've flirted with the idea of expansion. I know up until
Halifax,
2019,
another place, yeah.
They were looking at the Maritimes for a possible expansion team, the Atlantic Schooners. They had that talk up until 2019, and then you know what happened. And all of a sudden, those plans got shut down. I know Quebec City has been kind of flirting with the idea of bringing an expansion team there, because football is surprisingly huge in Quebec. Part of it has to do with the Alouettes. Part of it has to do with the University of Laval and their program, their marvelous program, and also the University of Montreal. They've had some success, and I believe it was the University of Sherbrooke, I believe, in the CI and U Sports. I think they made it to the Final Four this season.
I still call it CIS, and it's U Sports now.
Yeah.
I always get that one wrong. And there's a U Sports team right here in Lethbridge. I call them CIS. Now they're not CIS, but yeah, it's crazy.
So here's my big question, and we'll wrap things up. But I know there's only there's a handful of CFL teams who are community owned. Edmonton is community owned. Winnipeg's community owned. Saskatchewan's community owned. Do you think that the CFL can move forward if those three franchises are privately owned? Like they're not. I know they're not a bigger team. They're not a bigger league than they should be in terms of exposure, in terms of people who watch. I don't know what a lot of young kids play football in Canada, especially in the prairies, in Quebec now. But if they move to exclusively private ownership, could this league get more? Could this league afford now to have more exposure rather than being kind of closed off?
100%, because then they could actually market the league a little bit more. You'd have some guys want to make money, because nothing makes rich people happier than making more money. And so if they can advertise and get bigger crowds and draw people in, because there is an opportunity here to make some money. And the CFL for years has really had the problem where they don't market to a demographic that's younger than me, and they've lost that demographic. And if you could find a way to get those people back and watching games and doing everything else, but now they only have they have the TSN is the rights holders, and I don't think it's ever up for bid. So if they got Sportsnet involved, Rogers, which is a huge, obviously Rogers has lots of money. They own the Toronto Blue Jays, and they own everything right here in Canada. So if they could get Rogers bidding on some deals here and saying think outside the box and go outside the box and get some more money and get some more people, I think it can only help the league and get some better players, because if you spend money, you'll make money, right? It's one of those things. And if you can get guys that can come up here for the summer, make some money, and get some exposure a little bit, and make a good payday, and not be, because some of these guys don't make as much as practice rosters guys do in the NFL. Right.
And they have a job. They have a job outside.
Part-time jobs here and there, car
jobs,
sales or whatever it might be, or
endorsements,
or sponsorship deals. They got to go and say hi to Kiss FM 3 times a week or whatever it might be. And so if you got some investors in these communities that would dump some money into it and say, yeah, here we go, let's make a go of this. I can't see why it wouldn't work, because nothing draws a crowd like a crowd, and that's the fact, right? And there are some nights in August there where there aren't a lot of baseball fans, because if the Jays aren't in it, people they're still sports fans who want to watch something, right? So in July and August, there are people who want to go out and do something, and the tickets aren't expensive, and go out and having a good time. But if you don't know it's on, if you don't know it's happening, then no one's going to go. And like I just said, nothing draws a crowd like a crowd, Ryan.
Yep. And I'll build off your point. Scared money don't make money.
There you go. Yeah.
Before we go, we got one more comment from the comment section. Wonka the Saint asking, will Denver attain a gentleman's sweep of Miami? Does anyone else think the term gentleman's sweep is unnecessarily cruel? Gentleman's sweep is becoming one of those terms that I absolutely abhor in sports. But yes, I do think Denver puts the Miami Heat out of their misery tonight. I believe they're actually playing right now, if I'm not mistaken. So, but I think that tonight NBA Finals is over. We're gonna wrap things up, and Nikola Jokic is going to be the MVP of the playoffs.
Yeah,
My
that's when it
personal
just
opinion.
didn't get much attention. Really, it was two markets and whatever, not two sexy teams at all. It's just, and you kind of had a feeling Denver was just going to roll through that series a little bit.
Listen, as a former fat kid, and Nikola Jokic is also a former fat kid. Good for him. Awesome if he wins the MVP, and they actually deserve the third straight NBA MVP if Joel Embiid didn't whine his way to it this year.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap things up tonight. Brent, I'm going to give you the floor. Go ahead and promote your podcast. You have the floor for the next minute or two. Go right ahead, sir.
Well, the 1420 podcast, it was born down here in the Yankee Tavern North in Lethbridge, Alberta, in the boredom of COVID in 2020. We started just sitting around. The wife said, you got to start doing something, because we were sitting around doing not a whole bunch. And there was 4 beer sitting in front of me, and there a beer in Canada is 355 millimeters, and 355 times 4 is 1420. And that's how it all started. So 1420 Sports, we do a twice a week show with my friend Dave, who's a long-time friend. We talk basketball, hockey, football, baseball, and everything else in between. It's like sitting around the sports bar BS and about sports. And I got a morning show we do 5 times a week, 14:20 in the morning, where we sometimes go over the 14 minutes and 20 seconds of just talking some sports, talking birthdays and holidays and on this day in the sports world. So that's the 1420 Sports Bar podcast. 4 Beer with Sports, talking a whole lot more everywhere where you get your podcasts. There you go.
Excellent. And Brent, I want to thank you for filling in for Dustin, being a pinch hitter today. Really do appreciate it. Dustin will be back next week on our usual time. But in the meantime, follow us on social media right down here below: Twitter, Instagram, and at the scarcely used TikTok at NoCredsREQ, Facebook.com/NoCredsREQ, YouTube.com/at NoCredsREQ. And as usual, if you're watching live, you're watching on replay, please do us a favor and smash that like button. And don't forget to smash responsibly. On the podcast side, subscribe on a myriad of podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, wherever you podcast. Subscribe, give us a listen, rate and review. 5 stars is preferred as the rating, and review. If you leave a review, we might even read it on the air. So, for my fill-in host, Brent, my name is Ryan McCarthy. I have been your host. We've been your co-host tonight of No Credentials Required, where you don't need a press pass to talk sports. We are presented by Belly Up Sports in association with Godzilla Media, and we'll be back next week talking more sports as usual. So for Brent, I'm Ryan. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good night, Ryan.